There is something about confidence that people misunderstand, and that misunderstanding is the very reason so many keep chasing it but never truly feel it. From a distance, confidence looks like perfection. It looks like people who never doubt themselves, who walk into rooms with certainty, who speak without hesitation. And so the world teaches you to imitate that image. Speak louder, dress better, fake certainty, act like you have it all together. But what if I told you that everything you've been taught about confidence is incomplete? And in some ways, completely wrong. Because the truth is, confidence is not something you wear. It is not something you perform. It is not something you switch on when people are watching. Real confidence is built in places nobody sees. It is formed in quiet decisions, in private discipline, in moments where you choose growth over comfort. And here is the part nobody tells you. Confidence is not the absence of fear. It is the result of understanding who you are, accepting where you are, and committing to becoming who you were designed to be, regardless of how you feel in the moment. You see, many people are waiting to feel confident before they take action. They tell themselves, once I believe in myself, then I'll start. But that mindset keeps them stuck because confidence does not come first. Action does. Confidence is a byproduct. It is the reward for showing up when you don't feel ready. It is the residue of effort, the evidence of consistency, the echo of courage repeated over time. Think about it. A child does not wait to feel confident before learning to walk. They fall, they stumble, they try again. And through that process, confidence is born. Not from perfection, but from persistence. Somewhere along the way, we forgot that. We started believing that confidence is something you either have or you don't. But confidence is not a personality trait, it is a practice. And here is where the real secret begins to unfold. Confidence grows when you keep promises to yourself. Not the big promises that impress others, but the small, quiet ones that build integrity within you. When you say you will wake up early and you do it, you are building confidence. When you commit to learning a skill and you stay consistent, you are building confidence. When you face something uncomfortable instead of avoiding it, you are building confidence. Every kept promise becomes a brick. And over time, those bricks become a foundation that no opinion, no rejection, no temporary failure can shake. But let me challenge you further. The reason many people struggle with confidence is not because they lack ability. It is because they are disconnected from purpose. When you do not know why you are doing something, your energy becomes weak. Your focus becomes scattered. Your belief becomes fragile. But when you are clear about your purpose, something shifts inside you. You stop seeking validation because you are driven by vision. You stop comparing yourself because you are committed to your own path. Purpose gives confidence direction. Without it, confidence becomes noise. Another truth people avoid is this. Confidence requires honesty. You cannot build real confidence on lies. You cannot pretend your way into it. You must be willing to face yourself as you are, your strengths, your weaknesses, your habits, your patterns, not to judge yourself, but to understand yourself, because awareness is the beginning of transformation, and transformation is the pathway to confidence. There will be days when you doubt yourself. That does not mean you are not confident. It means you are human. Confidence is not about eliminating doubt. It is about not surrendering to it. It is about continuing to move, even when your mind is uncertain. It is about trusting your ability to figure things out, even if you don't have all the answers right now. And let's be clear about something else. Confidence is not arrogance. Arrogance is loud, fragile, and dependent on others. Confidence is quiet, steady, and rooted within. Arrogance needs attention. Confidence needs alignment. When you are truly confident, you don't need to prove anything to anyone. Your actions speak, your consistency speaks, your growth speaks. So if you are waiting for a moment where you suddenly feel ready, stop waiting. That moment is not coming. What you are looking for is built through movement, not thought. Start where you are, use what you have, do what you can, and do it again tomorrow. That is how confidence is formed, not in grand gestures, but in repeated decisions. Because in the end, the secret to confidence is not hidden in some complex formula. It is simple, but not easy. It is the daily choice to show up, to grow, to stay committed, and to believe that who you are becoming is worth the effort it takes to get there. There is a quiet deception that holds many people back, and it sounds so reasonable that most never question it. It whispers, wait until you feel confident, then take action. It sounds safe, it sounds logical, it feels like wisdom, but in reality, it is one of the greatest barriers to growth you will ever face. Because if you study the lives of people who appear confident, truly confident, not just loud or expressive, but grounded, steady, and certain, you will discover something surprising. They did not begin with confidence, they built it, and they built it the same way anyone else can, through action. The human mind has a tendency to seek comfort before movement. It wants assurance before effort. It wants clarity before commitment. But life does not work that way. Growth does not wait for your emotions to align. Progress does not require your permission to feel ready. In fact, if you wait until you feel ready, you may wait forever, because confidence is not a prerequisite for action, it is the result of it. Think about the first time you tried anything unfamiliar. Speaking in front of others, learning a new skill, taking on a responsibility you were not sure you could handle. You didn't feel confident. Your hands may have shaken. Your thoughts may have been scattered. Your voice may have carried uncertainty. And yet if you continued, something began to change. Not instantly, not dramatically, but gradually. Each attempt made the next one slightly easier. Each experience gave you a little more control, a little more understanding, a little more belief. That is how confidence forms, not as a sudden transformation, but as a quiet accumulation. The mistake people make is assuming that confident individuals operate without fear. That is not true. Fear is a natural response to the unknown. It is part of being human. The difference is not the absence of fear, but the decision to move in spite of it. Action interrupts fear. Action challenges doubt. Action rewires the mind. When you act, you gather evidence, and evidence is powerful. It begins to replace the stories you tell yourself about what you cannot do. You see, your mind is constantly collecting proof. If you avoid action, it collects evidence of hesitation. If you withdraw, it gathers proof of limitation. But when you act, even imperfectly, it begins to record a different story. It says, I tried, then I survived, then I improved, and eventually, I can. Confidence is nothing more than accumulated proof that you are capable of handling what comes your way. But action, to be effective, must be consistent. One step forward followed by 10 steps back into comfort will not build confidence. It is the repetition that creates transformation. It is showing up again and again, especially when it is inconvenient, especially when it is uncomfortable, especially when no one is watching. Because confidence is not built in moments of ease. It is built in moments of resistance. There will be days when you do not feel motivated, days when your energy is low, days when doubt is louder than determination. On those days, action becomes even more important, not because it feels good, but because it strengthens discipline. And discipline is deeper than motivation. Motivation comes and goes. Discipline remains. When you act without feeling like it, you send a powerful message to yourself. My actions are not controlled by my emotions. That realization alone begins to shift your identity. Another layer to this truth is understanding that action does not need to be perfect to be valuable. Many people hesitate because they want to do things the right way. They want certainty. They want guarantees. But perfection is not the goal. Progress is. When you focus on perfection, you delay action. When you focus on progress, you create momentum, and momentum builds confidence faster than perfection ever could. Imagine standing at the edge of something new, something that challenges you. Your mind will offer reasons to wait. It will highlight risks. It will exaggerate difficulties. It will question your ability. That is what the mind does. It tries to protect you. But protection is not always progress. If you listen only to that voice, you will remain where you are. And staying in the same place may feel safe, but it slowly erodes your belief in yourself. Now imagine choosing differently. Imagine taking one small step forward, and not a giant leap, not a dramatic move, just one step. That step may feel uncomfortable. It may feel uncertain, but it is a step nonetheless. And that step matters because it breaks the pattern of hesitation. It interrupts the cycle of waiting. It creates a new reference point in your mind. You begin to see yourself not as someone who waits, but as someone who acts. And identity is crucial here. Confidence is deeply connected to how you see yourself. If you repeatedly act, you begin to identify as a person who takes action. If you repeatedly avoid, you begin to identify as a person who hesitates. Your actions shape your identity, and your identity shapes your confidence. That is why even small actions are significant. They are not just tasks, they are signals. Signals that tell your mind who you are becoming. There is also a level of humility required in this process, because taking action often means being willing to be a beginner. It means accepting that you will not be excellent at first. It means allowing yourself to make mistakes, to learn, to adjust. Many people resist this because they fear judgment. But consider this: the fear of judgment often has a stronger hold than the desire for growth. And until you choose growth over approval, confidence will remain out of reach. The people you admire for their confidence have faced this same challenge. They have stepped into situations where they were not the best, where they did not have all the answers, where they had to learn in front of others. But they chose action over avoidance. And over time, their repeated efforts built competence. And competence naturally leads to confidence. Competence is another piece of this equation that cannot be ignored. When you act consistently, you improve. When you improve, you become more capable. And when you become more capable, your confidence increases. It is a natural progression, but it begins with action. Without action, there is no improvement. Without improvement, there is no competence. And without competence, confidence remains fragile. So when you think about confidence, do not think of it as something you need to acquire before you begin. Think of it as something you develop along the way. It is not the starting point, it is the outcome. And every action you take is an investment in that outcome. There will always be uncertainty. There will always be moments where you question yourself. But those moments are not signals to stop. They are invitations to act, because every time you act in the presence of doubt, you weaken its hold. You prove to yourself that doubt does not define your ability. And that realization is powerful. You do not need to feel confident to begin. You need to be willing to begin to become confident. That is the shift. That is the truth that changes everything. Stop waiting for the feelings. Start creating the evidence. Let your actions speak before your emotions catch up. And over time, something remarkable will happen. The same situations that once intimidated you will begin to feel familiar. The things that once seemed impossible will become manageable. The voice of doubt will grow quieter, not because it disappears, but because it is no longer the loudest voice in your mind. Your experience becomes louder. Your evidence becomes stronger. Your belief becomes more grounded. This is how confidence is built. Not in theory, not in intention, but in action. Quiet, consistent, repeated action. The kind that is not always seen, not always celebrated, but always shaping you. Step by step, decision by decision, you move from hesitation to certainty. Not because the path becomes easier, but because you become stronger walking it. There is a level of confidence that cannot be given to you by applause, by recognition, or by the approval of others. It is deeper than that. It is quieter than that, and yet it is far more powerful. It is the kind of confidence that comes from within, built not on what people say about you, but on what you know about yourself. And at the center of that knowing is something simple, something often overlooked, something that does not look impressive from the outside, but changes everything on the inside. Keeping promises to yourself. Most people think confidence is about bold moves, big wins, or public success, but real confidence is formed in private moments, in the decisions no one else sees. It is built when you say you will do something and you follow through. Not occasionally, not when it is convenient, but consistently. Because every time you keep a promise to yourself, you strengthen trust within yourself. And trust is the foundation of confidence. Consider this carefully. If someone repeatedly breaks promises to you, how much would you trust them? How seriously would you take their words? You would begin to doubt them. You would hesitate to rely on them. Now shift that perspective inward. When you make commitments to yourself and fail to honor them, what do you think happens internally? You may not say it out loud, but something inside you begins to weaken. A quiet doubt forms. A question emerges. Can I really depend on myself? This is where many people lose confidence without realizing why. It is not always because of failure in the external world. It is because of inconsistency in the internal world. When your words and your actions do not align, your sense of self begins to fracture. You start second-guessing your decisions. You hesitate. You lose clarity. Not because you are incapable, but because you have not built the habit of self-trust. But here is the powerful truth. You can rebuild that trust, and you rebuild it the same way it was lost, through your actions. One promise at a time, one commitment at a time, one decision at a time. Now understand this clearly. The promises that build confidence are not always the dramatic ones. They are not the grand declarations you announce to others. They are the small personal commitments you make quietly, waking up at the time you said you would, completing a task you planned, staying consistent with something you decided matters. These moments may seem insignificant, but they are not. They are the training ground of your character. Because when you keep a small promise, you send a message to yourself. I do what I say. And that message, repeated over time, becomes belief. It becomes identity. You begin to see yourself as reliable, disciplined, and capable. And that perception shapes how you approach everything else in life. There is also a principle here that many overlook. Confidence is not built through intensity. It is built through consistency. People often start with high energy, making large commitments fueled by motivation. But when that motivation fades, the commitment fades with it. And every time that cycle repeats, it weakens self-trust further. Instead, true confidence grows when you choose sustainability over intensity. When you set commitments that you can realistically maintain, and then you honor them daily. It is better to keep a small promise consistently than to break a large promise repeatedly, because consistency builds evidence, and evidence builds belief. You must begin to see your word as valuable, not just to others, but to yourself. When you say you will do something, treat it as an agreement. Not a suggestion, not a possibility, an agreement. And then honor it, even when you don't feel like it, especially when you don't feel like it. Because this is where transformation happens. When your actions are no longer dependent on your emotions. When your discipline overrides your excuses. When your commitment is stronger than your comfort. That is when confidence begins to take root in a way that cannot be shaken easily. Let's go deeper. There is a connection between self-respect and self-trust. When you keep promises to yourself, you begin to respect yourself more. Not in an arrogant way, but in a grounded, steady way. You know your value, not because others tell you, but because you have proven it to yourself through your behavior. And self-respect changes how you carry yourself. It influences your decisions, it affects your boundaries, it shapes your interactions. You begin to demand more from yourself, and as a result, you expect more from life. Not out of entitlement, but out of alignment, because you know you are putting in the effort required. On the other hand, when promises are repeatedly broken, self-respect diminishes. You begin to tolerate less from yourself. You lower your standards. You accept patterns that do not serve you. And over time, this creates a cycle that is difficult to break, but it can be broken with intention and discipline. Start by becoming aware of your commitments. Not just the big ones, but the small ones you make daily. Pay attention to your patterns. Where do you follow through? Where do you fall short? This awareness is not for judgment, it is for understanding. Because you cannot change what you do not recognize, then begin to rebuild deliberately. Choose one area, one commitment, something meaningful but manageable, and decide that you will honor it no matter how you feel. Do not rely on motivation, rely on decision, and once you decide, act. There will be resistance. Your mind will offer excuses. It will suggest postponement. It will rationalize delay. But remember, every time you give in to those excuses, you are reinforcing a pattern. And every time you resist them, you are creating a new one. As you continue, something subtle but powerful will begin to happen. You will start to trust yourself more. You will notice that when you say something, you believe it. When you plan something, you follow through. When you commit, you complete. And that internal alignment creates a sense of stability that is difficult to describe but easy to feel. This stability becomes your confidence. Not loud, not forced, not dependent on external validation, but real. Because it is rooted in experience, it is supported by evidence, it is reinforced by consistency. And this kind of confidence changes how you face challenges. When something difficult arises, you do not immediately doubt yourself. You remember your track record. You recall the promises you have kept. You draw strength from your own history of discipline. And that gives you the courage to move forward. Understand this clearly. Confidence is not something you think your way into. It is something you prove your way into. And every kept promise is proof. Proof that you can rely on yourself. Proof that you can handle responsibility. Proof that you can grow. There is also a sense of control that comes with this process. Not control over everything in life, but control over yourself, your actions, your decisions, your responses. And that sense of control reduces anxiety. It reduces hesitation. It increases clarity. Because you know that regardless of external circumstances, you will show up. And showing up consistently is what separates those who build lasting confidence from those who keep searching for it. It is not talent. It is not luck. It is not personality. It is discipline. It is integrity. It is the willingness to honor your own word day after day. So do not underestimate the power of small promises. Do not overlook the significance of daily discipline. These are not minor details. They are the building blocks of your confidence. Speak to yourself carefully, commit wisely, act consistently, and over time you will become someone you trust deeply. And when you trust yourself, confidence is no longer something you chase. It is something you carry naturally, quietly, and powerfully wherever you go. There is a reason some people can walk through uncertainty with a sense of direction, while others feel lost even when everything around them seems stable. It is not always intelligence. It is not always talent. And it is certainly not luck. It is clarity of purpose. Because when a person understands why they are doing what they are doing, something shifts within them. Their energy becomes focused. Their decisions become intentional. Their confidence becomes anchored not in circumstances but in meaning. Many people attempt to build confidence by working on the surface, improving appearance, practicing communication, trying to control how others perceive them. While these things may create temporary boosts, they do not create lasting confidence. Because without purpose, confidence has no direction. It becomes dependent on outcomes and opinions. And anything that depends on outcomes and opinions will always be unstable. Purpose changes that entirely. Purpose gives your actions weight. It gives your efforts significance. It transforms what you do from a task into a mission. And when you are connected to a mission, your relationship with fear begins to change. You no longer ask, what if I fail? You begin to ask, what happens if I don't try? That shift alone can awaken a level of confidence that cannot be manufactured artificially. Understand this. Purpose is not something external that you stumble upon one day. It is something you uncover through awareness, reflection, and experience. It is tied to your values, your strengths, your perspective, and even your struggles. Often, the very challenges you have faced carry clues about the direction you are meant to move toward. But many people ignore those clues because they are busy comparing their path to others. Comparison is one of the greatest distractions from purpose. When you constantly measure your life against someone else's journey, you lose sight of your own direction. You begin to chase what looks impressive instead of what is meaningful. And when your actions are not aligned with your true purpose, confidence weakens. Because deep down there is a disconnect. You may achieve things, but they do not feel fulfilling. You may appear successful, but you do not feel grounded. Purpose removes that conflict. When you are aligned with your purpose, your actions and your identity begin to match. There is harmony between what you do and who you are becoming. And that harmony creates a sense of inner stability. You are no longer easily shaken by opinions because your direction is not defined by others. You are no longer easily discouraged by setbacks because your commitment is not tied to immediate results. But let's be clear about something important. Purpose does not eliminate difficulty. It does not remove obstacles. In fact, it often introduces new challenges. But what it does is give you the strength to endure those challenges. Because when you know why you are doing something, you are more willing to persist. You are more willing to sacrifice. You are more willing to grow. There is a difference between doing something for approval and doing something for purpose. When you act for approval, your confidence rises and falls based on feedback. When people praise you, you feel strong. When they criticize you, you feel uncertain. Your sense of self becomes dependent on external voices. But when you act with purpose, your confidence becomes internal. Feedback still matters, but it does not define you. You are able to listen, learn, and adjust without losing your sense of direction. Because your why is stronger than any single opinion. Think about the moments when you have felt most alive, most engaged, most focused. There is a high chance those moments were connected to something meaningful, something that mattered to you beyond immediate reward. That is where purpose begins to reveal itself. Not in what is easy, but in what feels significant. Now, many people struggle because they believe purpose must be something grand or extraordinary. They think it must be a single life-defining mission that is clear from the beginning. But purpose does not always arrive fully formed. Sometimes it begins as a small interest, a curiosity, a desire to improve something, a need to solve a problem. And as you act on it, it becomes clearer. Action plays a role here as well. Just as confidence is built through action, purpose is clarified through action. You do not find purpose by waiting and thinking alone. You find it by engaging, by trying, by exploring. Each experience teaches you something about what resonates with you and what does not. And over time, patterns begin to emerge. As those patterns become clearer, your direction strengthens. And as your direction strengthens, your confidence follows. Because now you are not just moving, you are moving with intention. You are not just working, you are working towards something that matters to you. There is also a level of responsibility that comes with purpose. When you recognize that your life has direction, that your actions have meaning, you begin to take yourself more seriously. Not in a heavy or stressful way, but in a committed way. You understand that your time, your energy, your effort, they are valuable. And that awareness influences your choices. You become more selective with how you spend your time. You become more focused in your actions. You become more disciplined in your habits. And all of these contribute to confidence, because confidence thrives in structure. It grows when your life is aligned with your priorities. Another important aspect is that purpose reduces unnecessary fear. When you are unclear about your direction, every decision feels heavy. Every risk feels overwhelming because you do not know if it is worth it. But when you are clear about your purpose, decisions become simpler. Not always easier, but clearer. You can evaluate choices based on whether they align with your direction or not. This clarity reduces hesitation. It reduces overthinking. It increases decisiveness. And decisiveness is closely linked to confidence. When you are able to make decisions and stand by them, you reinforce your belief in your own judgment. Let us also consider resilience. Life will not always go according to plan. There will be setbacks, delays, unexpected challenges. Without purpose, these moments can feel like reasons to quit. But with purpose, they become part of the process. You begin to see obstacles not as signs to stop, but as steps to navigate. This perspective strengthens confidence because it changes how you interpret difficulty. Instead of seeing challenges as evidence of your limitations, you begin to see them as opportunities to grow. And each time you navigate a challenge, your confidence deepens. There is a quiet strength in knowing why you are doing something. It keeps you grounded when things are uncertain. It keeps you focused when distractions appear. It keeps you moving when motivation fades. And over time, that consistency builds a level of confidence that is not easily shaken. You must also understand that purpose is personal. It does not need validation from others. It does not need to be understood by everyone. What matters is that it is true to you. Because confidence grows when you are authentic. When you are not trying to fit into someone else's expectations, but instead are aligned with your own values. This authenticity creates a sense of freedom. You no longer feel the need to prove yourself constantly. You no longer feel the pressure to compare. You are able to focus on your path, your progress, your growth, and that focus strengthens your confidence further. So if you feel uncertain, if you feel disconnected, if your confidence feels inconsistent, do not just look at your actions, look at your direction. Ask yourself why you are doing what you are doing. Reflect on what truly matters to you. Pay attention to what gives you energy, what challenges you in a meaningful way, what feels aligned with who you want to become, and then act on it, even in small ways, because purpose becomes clearer through engagement. And as it becomes clearer, your confidence will begin to stabilize. In the end, confidence is not just about believing in yourself. It is about believing in the direction you are moving toward. When you have that, when your actions are guided by purpose, your confidence is no longer fragile. It becomes steady. It becomes grounded. It becomes something that does not depend on temporary circumstances, but is rooted in something deeper, something lasting, something that continues to grow as you do. There is a kind of confidence that looks convincing on the outside but collapses under pressure. And then there is a kind of confidence that is quiet, steady, and unshakable. The difference between the two is not talent, not intelligence, not even experience. It is honesty. Real confidence is built on truth. Not the truth people see when you present your best side, but the truth you are willing to face when no one is watching. And this is where many people struggle because self-awareness requires courage and growth requires humility. Most people want confidence, but they do not want the process that produces it. They want to feel strong without confronting their weaknesses. They want to appear capable without acknowledging where they need improvement. But you cannot build something real on something false. You cannot create lasting confidence by ignoring the parts of yourself that need attention. Because whatever you avoid does not disappear. It remains quietly influencing your thoughts, your decisions, and your belief in yourself. Self-awareness is the starting point. It is the ability to see yourself clearly, not through the lens of comparison, not through the filter of ego, but as you are. Your habits, your patterns, your strengths, your limitations. This is not about judgment. It is about understanding. Because without understanding, there can be no intentional growth. And without growth, confidence remains shallow. Think about it this way. If you are unaware of where you struggle, how can you improve? If you do not recognize your patterns, how can you change them? Many people repeat the same cycles in life, not because they lack ability, but because they lack awareness. They respond to situations in the same way. They make similar decisions. They face similar outcomes, and they wonder why nothing changes. Awareness breaks that cycle. It brings your patterns into the light. It allows you to pause, to reflect, to ask, why am I doing this? Why do I respond this way? What can I do differently? And those questions are powerful because they shift you from being reactive to being intentional. But awareness alone is not enough. It must be followed by acceptance. Not resignation, not defeat, but acceptance. The willingness to acknowledge where you are without denial or excuse. This is difficult because the mind often resists discomfort. It prefers to protect your image rather than challenge your reality. It may justify your behavior, shift blame, or minimize your weaknesses. But those defenses come at a cost. They prevent growth. Acceptance, on the other hand, opens the door to transformation. When you accept where you are, you create a stable starting point. You stop wasting energy pretending. You stop avoiding. You begin to work with reality instead of against it. And that is where real progress begins. Now, here is something important to understand. Accepting your current state does not mean staying there. It means recognizing it so you can change it. Growth requires movement. It requires effort. It requires consistency. And this is where confidence is truly developed through the process of becoming. Many people think confidence comes from being perfect, but perfection is not the goal. Growth is, because perfection is static, it suggests an endpoint. Growth is dynamic, it suggests progress. And confidence thrives in progress. It grows when you see yourself improving, even in small ways. Every time you learn something new, every time you correct a mistake, every time you push beyond your comfort zone, you are reinforcing a powerful belief: I can evolve. And that belief is at the heart of real confidence. Not the belief that you are already everything you need to be, but the belief that you can become what you need to be. There is also a level of patience required in this process. Growth is not immediate. It does not happen overnight. It is gradual, often subtle. And because of that, many people become discouraged. They want quick results. They want instant change. But confidence built quickly is often fragile. Confidence built slowly is strong. You must be willing to commit to the process, even when progress feels slow, even when results are not visible yet, because every effort matters. Every step counts. And over time, those small efforts accumulate into meaningful change. Let us also address the role of mistakes. Many people fear making mistakes because they associate them with failure, but mistakes are not the opposite of success. They are part of it. They provide feedback. They reveal gaps. They highlight areas for improvement. And when approached correctly, they become valuable tools for growth. The key is not to avoid mistakes, but to learn from them, to reflect on what happened, to understand why it happened, and to adjust accordingly. This process strengthens your ability to navigate challenges. And as your ability grows, so does your confidence. There is also something powerful about taking responsibility. When you take ownership of your actions, your decisions, your outcomes, you gain control. Not control over everything, but control over your response. And that control is empowering. It shifts you from a position of helplessness to one of agency. Instead of asking, why is this happening to me? You begin to ask, what can I do about this? That shift in perspective is critical. Because confidence is not about controlling every situation. It is about trusting your ability to respond effectively. Another important element is alignment. When your actions align with your values, your confidence strengthens. When there is a gap between what you believe and how you behave, tension is created. And that tension weakens confidence. But when you live in alignment, when your actions reflect your principles, there is a sense of integrity. And integrity builds trust within yourself. You begin to feel stable, grounded, consistent. You are not shifting based on circumstances or opinions. You are guided by something deeper. And that stability is a key component of lasting confidence. It is also important to understand that growth is ongoing. There is no final version of yourself where you have nothing left to learn. Life will continue to present new challenges, new environments, new opportunities. And each of these will require you to adapt, to learn, to grow. But instead of seeing this as overwhelming, see it as empowering. Because it means your potential is not fixed. It means you are not limited by where you are today. It means you have the ability to expand, to improve, to evolve continuously. And when you truly understand that, your relationship with yourself changes. You stop being overly critical. You stop expecting perfection. You start focusing on progress. You become more patient, more intentional, more committed. This mindset creates a strong foundation for confidence because you are no longer dependent on being flawless. You are confident in your ability to grow. You trust the process. You trust yourself, and that trust shows in how you carry yourself. It shows in your decisions. It shows in your resilience. Not because you never struggle, but because you know you can work through it. So if you want real confidence, do not focus on appearing strong. Focus on becoming aware. Be honest with yourself. Identify your patterns. Accept where you are. Commit to growth. Learn from your mistakes. Align your actions with your values. Because confidence is not built by hiding your weaknesses. It is built by facing them, understanding them, and improving them. Step by step, day by day, you transform. Not into someone perfect, but into someone capable, someone resilient, someone grounded. And that is the kind of confidence that lasts. Not because it is loud or visible, but because it is real.